Hi there everyone, my name is Chelsea. Welcome to Little Mountain Ranch. Welcome to my garden. I'm really happy to have you here with me today for an early summer garden tour. It smells so good in here right now, and there are just so many things that are just on the verge of being ready to harvest, and I just can't wait to show you. Since we're in the forest garden right now, I guess we'll start here. We have some raspberries that are just starting to turn red. I noticed one over here that I'm going to be able to pick probably by tomorrow morning. It's very exciting. I love raspberries. Oh look, there's one right in there. I can actually pick that one. Oh my gosh, the mosquitoes are out in full force this morning. So not quite red, but close enough. The taste of raspberries always reminds me of my grandfather, who was an avid gardener. I do believe that I got my love for gardening from him, but he used to take us out into the garden in the summer in the heat of the day, and eating a raspberry that's warm right off of the cane is just, there's nothing better in the world. So every time I taste one, it brings me right back to my childhood in his garden. Oh, check this out. So these are sea buckthorn or sea berries, and this is going to be my very first ever crop of sea berries, and just look at how many there are on these bushes. Incredible. So these are going to turn bright orange, and they're quite sour tasting from what I understand, although I haven't had one before. But the reason that I planted these is they are supposed to be one of the highest in vitamin C fruits that you can grow, and also very drought tolerant. So super excited to have my first crop of these this year. Look at this beautiful ornamental grass. I pulled this out of the gardens around my house when we first put in the forest garden, and the nice thing about these grasses is they don't spread, but they just look so pretty, especially when the wind blows through them. We are right on the verge of having elderberry flowers here. Actually, this one we can almost harvest, so close. I've been making a lot of jellies this year from flowers, so I'm going to try my hand at making an elderberry jelly. I'd made an elderberry syrup last year, but I made a mistake of having too many of the green stems in it, and so it tasted very like vegetable kind of flavor, not sweet, like a flower kind of syrup should. So I'm gonna make sure that I just have the petals in it this year, and hopefully it'll be really good because they sure smell amazing. We have cherries about to ripen here. So in our zone, we live in a zone 3B, we can only grow really hardy cherries, and they're generally a sour cherry. Fortunately though, we all love sour cherries, and I make a sour cherry pie filling that's absolutely delicious. So we're gonna have a whole bunch. You can see up there we have more, so we'll be able to hopefully can a lot this year. What else do we have in the forest garden I can show you? Oh my goodness. So if you'll remember, about 4 weeks ago now, I showed you how I stomped down my comfrey. So there's some new comfrey coming up there, but the plant was coming up from here, and it was probably about this tall on the tree. So I stomped it down all the way around, and I explained that the reason that I do that is because the bumblebees absolutely love comfrey flowers, and I don't like to just cut it. A lot of people do what's called chop and drop. They'll just cut it and then use it as a mulch around their fruit trees. But I don't like to take the flowers away from the bumblebees. So by stomping it down this way, I still get a huge, you can see, a huge wide circle around my fruit trees that acts as a mulch and keeps all the weeds and the grass back. But I still get all the flowers. These are actually starting to come to an end now, so I will be able to chop this down, but you can see we still have some bumblebee friends in there. I think this is actually more effective as far as how wide of a circle we can have around this tree. The poor peonies have come to an end. That's the one thing about peonies, is they are just absolutely beautiful. Oh, we've got a few blossoms that are gonna go again there, but they really don't last very long at all. We have a wild bergamot here this is probably about 4 weeks or so away from actually blooming. I have a friend who is a herbalist, and she was telling me the other day that if you steep the wild bergamot flowers, it tastes very similar to an Earl Grey tea. So I'm gonna try that this year. Oh my gosh, the mosquitoes in the forest garden are just terrible. Need to get back out into the main garden where they're not so bad. But it's so fun to walk through the forest garden now because it's just like a jungle. And if you'll remember back when I planted this, I want to say this is year 6. I think it's year 6 of the forest garden. Everything was like this big. The trees were only about as tall as I am, and it didn't produce anything for a couple years, and now it is just prolific with what it produces for our family. Okay, into the main garden we go. My main garden pathways do really need to be mowed down, so you'll just have to excuse the fact that we have long grass in our pathways today. Along with the long grass and the pathways, we do have a ton of food that is getting close to being able to be harvested in this garden. And that's the whole point of a garden anyway, right? Everything is just looking so lovely. And check this out. Look at all the peas on these vines. They're absolutely loaded. So I have been very diligent over this heat wave that we've been having of keeping these peas really well watered, because the risk you run during a drought is your pea vines drying out, because they do need a lot of moisture. And I'm happy to say that I think my strategy worked, and we just have so many peas on here. These ones are my favorite. Oh, there's another bumblebee doing her job. These ones are my favorite. They're so sweet and delicious as a sugar snap pea when they're small like this. Snacking as we go. Okay, since we're over here by the brassicas, let me show you what's happening in here. We have some broccoli. I'm gonna leave that one, maybe another day, but not that long. So you wanna harvest your broccoli before these start to get loose, like where you can pull them apart easily. These are still nice and tight. Here's an example of one that I need to harvest right now. You can see that that's getting loose. Still, of course, totally edible, but if you leave this for much longer, it will start to flower. So my broccoli heads are definitely much smaller than they have been in past years. But to be honest, with this crazy weather we've had, I'm happy to get any at all. We have kohlrabi in there, ready to harvest as well. Our cauliflower is not yet forming heads. Oh, I lied. We have a little tiny one right there. But these ones are not, and that's actually a good thing, because that means they're probably going to form a nice big head instead of a little tiny head like that one. So the reason that your broccoli and cauliflower forms really small heads is due to stress. If the plant is experiencing stress, and this can actually be cold stress in the early season, even though they are a cool crop, they don't like really cold temperatures, or lots of heat. So the whole point of the plant is to propagate itself, right? So it wants to produce a flower. And if the plant is signaled by external stress that potentially there's a risk that it's not going to be able to get one up, it would rather send, obviously it's not thinking about it, but this is the genetics, but it would rather send up a small head than none at all, and at least get some flowers and be able to propagate itself at least a little bit. So that's kind of the reason. And this year we had basically a double whammy. We had a really cold long spring, and then we had a heat wave come in. So if I get any broccoli and cauliflower at all, I'm going to call it a success. I have never grown Napa cabbage before, and I think I left these for too long, because as you can see, they're starting to open up here. So I'm going to harvest these Napa cabbages, turn them into something yummy. I'm not sure what yet, but yeah, like you can see, this one is really starting to open here. But right away, so that I don't lose all of these, because I have, I think, 8 of them here. I need to deadhead my cosmos. I'm so happy that I planted these cosmos all over the garden, because just having that little splash of pink here and amongst all this green looks so beautiful. And look at all these colors. You have that one. That is just gorgeous. Almost red ones back there. Oh yeah, see, look at this. Little tiny broccoli heads. So if you see tiny little heads like this forming, and you're thinking that if you just leave them, they're gonna get a lot bigger, I'm sad to say that they aren't. I'll leave this for a little tiny bit longer, but this isn't gonna form some big, beautiful head, unfortunately. But the one thing about broccoli, and some are more prone to this than others, but if we take this middle head off, we could get side shoots on the plant. So that's what I'm gonna be doing here, is I'll be pulling off all these little ones, and then I'll just be harvesting the side shoots throughout the rest of the summer. Tiny, tiny little heads. Oh well, I guess you can't win them all. Just as a word of encouragement to those of you that are relatively new to gardening and maybe you're not having a great gardening year this year, this was a really hard year for a lot of people, for one. But also, I find that almost every single year I have gardened, there's something that was a failure. Something that just didn't grow well. I either didn't get it in at the right time, it was too hot, it was too cold, or whatever. So if that's something you're experiencing, don't lose heart. It is pretty typical of vegetable gardening. So I'm not sure what I was thinking here. Oh my goodness. I planted quite a few zucchini plants this year. And the reason for that is last year, I think I only planted 4, maybe 5, and it was just a really poor zucchini year and I didn't get nearly enough. We love zucchini in our house. I preserve it in all kinds of ways, which we'll talk about when we get to that point of preserving zucchini. But this year I planted 10 zucchini plants. And with this heat that we're having, they are very, very happy. So I'm going to have more zucchini than any one person should. But very excited right now because you are here with me to pick the very first zucchini of 2024. Isn't that gorgeous? Look at that beautiful leaf. This one's called a Stardust zucchini. Look at how pretty that is. Oh, it's so beautiful. My harvesting apron, I've had several people mention that I haven't been wearing my apron, but we just haven't been getting a ton out of the garden to warrant it. But the thing that's so handy about this apron is I put it on when I leave the house in the morning, and even though I always say to myself, oh, I'm not going to do any harvesting, I'll do that later, I always end up picking stuff in the garden, and this is just a super handy one. I think it is made by, I want to say Rue Aprons, I think is the brand, but I'll put a link for it down in the show notes for you if you would like to check it out. I'm not affiliated with them or anything, I just really like the product. Check this out. So this one, look at that beautiful flower. This one is called Cue Ball, and I think I'm going to pick that one. This one is a summer squash, similar to a zucchini from what I understand as far as the flavor, but I'm going to cut that up and have that for lunch. Our pickling cuke situation is looking better by the second. We have tons of little baby pickling cucumbers. The vines are looking much better than they were. So on, I think it was June 11th, we had a frost that killed off a ton of my pickling cucumbers, and I ended up having to replant. Look at all those flowers. And I had honestly let go of getting pickling cucumbers this year, but the weather turned. We ended up with some gorgeous heat, and now I'm probably going to have more pickling cucumbers than I know what to do with. And that's not true. I know exactly what to do with them. We love bread and butter pickles, dill pickles, all the pickles we really enjoy in our house. Actually, I'll probably start pickle making in about a week to 2 weeks or so. What I like to do for pickle harvesting is I'll come out early in the morning before it gets warm and harvest all my pickles, and then I'll make pickles fresh with the freshest cucumbers as I possibly can, because the fresher the cucumber, the crisper the pickle. That really is the best piece of advice I can give for getting a crisp pickle, is fresh pickles. I'll usually just make up a big batch of brine at the beginning of the week, and then I'll just make small batches with my steam canner every morning, usually 6 jars or so of it. But I'll take you along with me when we get to that point. Our calendula patch here has really started to bloom. Aren't they beautiful? Leeks are starting to look lovely. Our celery is looking a little bit better than it was. I'm not sure how these beans got in here, or this dill for that matter, but they were looking really sad. Some of them are still looking a little bit sad, but I gave them a really, really good watering last night, and they seem to have perked up a little bit, which is great. Our turnips are looking gorgeous. I'm getting some turnips we can actually harvest there pretty quick. Remember the other day how I said I wasn't going to bother weeding my garlic because I was going to be harvesting it in a couple of weeks? Well, I was down here in the garden the other evening and it was just beautiful and the mosquitoes weren't bad. So I decided to weed it, and now it's ready. We'll just pull the garlic out, and I'm probably going to plant, I think, spinach in this patch because I actually didn't plant spinach this year. And spinach is one of those things that I can usually plant for a fall crop. We can't do a lot of growing in our garden for a fall garden. I'm kind of a one and done kind of gardener up here. Everything goes in and then everything gets harvested all at once and then the gardening season is over. But because I'm going to have this bed here from my garlic, I may as well fill it with something. Oh my gosh, look at this. What is that? You guys see her there? That, my friends, is a honeybee. And she comes from one of my hives. So I know I did say the other day that I wasn't going to be doing honeybees this year. I lost my honeybees in November last year to wasps. They came in and killed both my hives. And I was going to take a break from honeybees, but I was talking to some friends of mine who own BCB Supply, Nina and Winston, who are just lovely people, and they offered to send me 2 nukes. And their son delivered them the other day. I'll take you down and show you because I got them all installed in their new location. I changed the location. I have some plans to hopefully be able to get them through the wasp season this year, but I'll share that with you once we get down there. And I wandered away from what I wanted to show you because I got into talking about the bees. That flower patch that I've been talking about since I planted it is just probably a week or 2 away from blooming, which is so exciting. We have dwarf cosmos in the front, tall cosmos in the back. I put zinnia in here and you can see they're starting to form their flowers. I should have put these ones in the front. Next year, that's what I'll do, but I'm still going to get blooms, which is very exciting. And then all of our beautiful sunflowers along the back. Oh, look, get a little ladybug on there. We've had so many ladybugs this year. Anyways, I cannot wait because this is going to start blooming just as we pull out all of our garlic, which means from up on this part of the garden, you're going to look down and see all this color down at the bottom. And I've been envisioning this and probably talking about it in every video that I've shown of my garden since I planted these. I call myself kind of an intuitive gardener. I don't really plan things out before I do them. I mean, I know how many plants I need to start in the late winter, all my seedlings and all that kind of stuff. So I know what I'm going to be planting, but I don't usually know where, and I don't usually decide until the day of planting. That's just the way that I've always done it. This is the first year that I have actually planned something that's kind of more systematic like this, like planting all the flowers along the bottom, knowing that this garlic was going to be pulled up and we were going to be able to see all these beautiful flowers, and knowing that from up here, the higher part of the garden, we were going to look down and see all this color down there. So I hope it works out in the way that I imagine it too, but I think it's going to because it's already looking really beautiful. So over here, our potatoes are starting to flower. This is my overflow potato patch. I'll take you up and show you the main potato patch in a minute, but look at all these pretty flowers on these potatoes. They're looking really, really good. I bought way too many seed potatoes this year, so I had to put in an extra patch down here, but I have a root cellar you can see back over there. So having extra potatoes is actually just fine because they store amazingly well in my root cellar and I have lots of extra room in there. Looks like it's going to be a really good potato year this year, which is fantastic because last year was not. Some beautiful dill blooming here. I try to plant my dill and my pickling cucumbers at the same time so that they're both ready at the same time, but because I ended up having to replant so many of my pickling cucumbers, my dill is ready before my pickling cucumbers are. These heads will actually last in the fridge for quite some time, and I like putting the flower heads in my pickles. So I'll probably pull these off pretty quick here and just put them in the fridge and hope that they stay good until pickle season time. A lot of these leaves I'll be pulling off and I'll just freeze dry them. So either way, we'll have lots of pickles. Oh, look, there is another ladybug in there. So she's probably munching on a few aphids because I did have some aphids on my, my dill this year. So my fennel is ready to harvest. So this is the first time I've ever grown fennel. I basically just did it for fun. I don't really have a plan for what I'm going to do with those. If anybody has any good recipes for fresh bulb fennel like that, let me know. Drop those in the comments and I will use some of them to make something delicious with those. So this bed here is definitely one that could be doing better. And the reason for that is I put this bed, this is a sprout box garden bed, and I put it on top of an area or beside an area where I had mint. And mint can be very invasive. Case in point, this is all mint here. And it's coming up everywhere. So this is my lemon balm, mint, 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 basically all over this bed. So my plan this year is I'm just gonna kind of let this go. I've got all kinds of other things in here too. We have parsley in here, oregano, sage, rosemary, lavender. We have a bunch of different things in here that are probably gonna get choked out by a lot of this. I'm just gonna let it go. We'll harvest what we can out of this bed. And then in the fall, I'm actually going to take all this dirt out of here and pull this bed back, and we're going to put something down underneath it. I haven't decided what yet, and then put the bed back on top of it and hope that we can protect it from this mint getting up into it, because I really do like having it here. It's kind of the perfect spot in front of my little greenhouse here. And this monster, my goodness, this just really loves a lot of water, and with all the rain we had in the spring, it went crazy. So this is Russian tarragon here. It is a mammoth plant. This, I also have a bunch of nettle in here too. This is hemp nettle, so this isn't stinging nettle in here. So we gotta pull that out. Oh my goodness, look what we have here, my friends. This is the German chamomile, and look, you guys, you see all of the ladybugs? It has just been a crazy year for ladybugs this year. They're everywhere. A welcome guest in my garden. So I need to start coming out and picking all of these too, because we love chamomile tea, and this makes the most lovely chamomile tea. So I'll just freeze dry these and then just pour hot water over them in the winter for nice tea. I will do the same thing with all this mint that's invading this bed as well. I will harvest it. I won't let it go to waste. This little bed in here just makes me so happy. So this is that trellis that I made out of willow. I planted some beautiful scarlet emperor runner beans that are starting to flower and climb up. And then down at the bottom, I planted these beautiful nasturtiums, and they're starting to fill it out like I knew they would. And they just look so pretty with the little pansies in the background and the German chamomile up in behind here. I just love it. I think it is time to cut the columbine back. I love columbine because it has such a long period of flowering. I think we're on 4, maybe even 5 weeks of flowering. But it is time to cut it back, and it has completely blocked my path down to my little greenhouse over here. Sunflowers are starting to form flower heads. We have some zinnia planted in here. Our beautiful kale is ready to start harvesting off with a little bit more vigor. I have pulled a few leaves off of these, but we can start getting more serious about it now. So these ones here are one of my favorite runner beans. I can never remember how to pronounce the name, so I'll just put it on the screen for you. But I've planted a whole bunch of them here. They're gonna climb up this little teepee that I've made. Our beautiful lettuce, gorgeous cabbage, our very sad little corn patch here. I don't think we're gonna see much corn off of these, but I think they look pretty, so they can stay. So this is our little green stalk here. So this is the regular or the original size, so the really deep pockets. And you can see this little cauliflower here. I can actually just pull this one right out. That was not a success. I'll bring that up to the house though. I'll eat that. But the peppers here are looking really good. Oh, there's another one of my little honeybees. Hi, sweetie. We also have a yellow zucchini here. And I'm a little skeptical about its ability to actually form a good size zucchini on that. There are these racks that you can get to attach to these so that these have something to rest on. But I don't know. I just don't feel like it has enough growing space in the soil to produce a big enough plant, but we'll see. This was just an experiment. A lot of this stuff putting in here, because this is the first time I've ever grown in a green stock before, was an experiment. I'll show you the one down in the high tunnel. I've learned a lot actually about growing in these already. So I'll do this one a little bit differently next year. Lots of flowers and lots of herbs, because the flowers do really well in these and they just look so pretty, don't they? Okay, let's go down here. This is where I have my bees. Okay, so this is where I decided to put my hives, which is right by my garden and my high tunnel. So I have a couple of different motivations for why I picked this location. I've always kept my honeybees up on the hill over there. You probably remember that. You could see the hives up on the hill last year during the summer. But I have decided to keep them here because I walk by this multiple times throughout the day. So it's really easy for me to just take a quick look and check on them. I also have them so that they are facing east, so they get the morning sun, but my greenhouse here shades them in the afternoon when it's really, really hot, so they can get a little protection from the heat. Oh, I'm so happy. Hold on, let me show you this. See if we can get close enough. This little thing that I have here, that is a waterer for my honeybees, and you can see a honeybee in there right now taking a drink, and I have all the rocks in there so that they can get down close to the water, but they can get out easily without drowning. During the summertime, I like to keep water like that close to my bees so that they don't have to work too hard to go and find it out in nature. I also wanted it close to my garden, of course, for pollination, and my high tunnel as well. When I went in my high tunnel this morning, there were already some girls in there working. And then the last reason is because I am planning on moving my hives into my high tunnel for the winter. We have very bitter cold winters and it's difficult to keep bees alive throughout the winter. And so I thought I would offer them a little bit of extra protection by putting them in the high tunnel. I will have the doors open and the sides rolled up, because one of the things I don't want to have happen is in the winter time for there to be a warm day and for it to get too warm in that high tunnel, and then for the bees to break up their cluster. In the wintertime, bees will form a cluster. They can actually produce an incredible amount of heat all clustered together, and then the ones from the outside move to the inside and back and forth, similar to the way penguins do in the far north actually. And if it gets too warm, they'll break that cluster up, and then when the temperature drops way down at night, they can freeze. So I don't want that to happen, but I think that if I keep the sides up and the doors open, it'll just give them a little bit of extra protection, especially from the snow and the wind. Because one of the other issues in the winter is that if it snows really heavily, it can block the entrance to their hive. And of course we try to keep that clear, but with having the extra cover of the high tunnel, we won't have to worry about that. So that's my plan, and that's why I moved them down here, and I feel a lot better about this location. It is fully fenced as well, so I'm not going to end up with animals getting in here and knocking the hives over. So you can see that the hives are really active, bees going in and out. It was so sad last year because the bees were in great shape and they had tons of honey stored up for the winter. But what happened is we had an unseasonably warm autumn, but cold enough that the bees kind of went into their hive, but not cold enough that the wasps did. The thing about wasps, and I've done a lot of research on this because I wanted to see if I could find a way to stop that problem from ever happening again, is that when the queen wasp, when she stops laying eggs, the worker wasps don't have anything to do and they will actually die. They don't stay in the hive and hibernate over the winter the way the queen does and the way that the larva does. So they kind of lose their job. And one of the things that's really interesting is that they will feed the baby wasps meat, actually. So they're carnivores. They'll go out and collect meat and they bring that back, and that's what they feed their hive. I'm not an expert on this, by the way, so I don't have this completely down, but this is my understanding of it. And the larvae release this sweet liquid that the wasps feed off of, and they absolutely love it. And so when that sweet liquid is no longer available in their hive, they want to go find something sweet somewhere else. And a beehive is the perfect place for all kinds of sweetness, right? So, and the other thing is that wasps can handle much cooler temperatures than honeybees can. So they can be active even when the honeybees are already starting to get ready for winter, form their cluster and all of that. So they can get into a hive, kill the bees, and eat the honey. So I do have some plans for how I'm going to protect my bees from those hungry wasps in the fall. Hopefully we won't have a repeat of last year where it's really, really warm late into the fall. So I will share that with you when we get to that point of winterizing our hives. So as you can see, I've been wandering around in my high tunnel here, and our tomatoes are starting to get nice and tall. I've been working really diligently this year to try to keep everything pruned and really clean in the high tunnel. Oh, Nala's here. Well, hello, my little greenhouse kitty. She loves the high tunnel. She spends most of her time in here, don't ya? The last time we were in here together, I was working on this row, and I had finished this whole row, but I still needed to do this one. So I came in night before last, I think it was, and got this row all done. Put a whole bunch more strings up to hold these heavy plants up. And then over on this side, I did the same. So these are all my bush tomatoes or my determinant tomatoes. And one of the things that I did here is I actually just tied a string from over here and then wrapped it around the plants. And that's just to hold them from falling into the pathways here. So it's still easy for me to work in here. So you can see I did the same thing here and here as well. These ones, because they're a bush style and they have so many branches, they're a little bit more difficult to trellis up with a string this way. But this method is actually working really well. And I can hardly believe how tall my peppers are. I don't think I've ever grown such beautiful peppers before. And we're actually starting to get peppers on these plants. It's so exciting. And then over down here, you remember the other day when we picked the basil? Look at how much it's grown. So that was about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks ago. And you can see how much growth we have on this basil. Again, we do have a few grasshoppers in here that have been munching, but they're not causing a big enough issue for me to worry about doing anything about. Just a few little holes in there, so I don't mind that. But yeah, we can do a big harvest on this basil. I'll probably wait and do that a little bit later today because I have a lot of projects that I'm going to get to today. But that's why I was saying that if you start pruning them fairly aggressively, so I'm going to come in here and cut these right down again, you can get repeated harvests from your basil throughout the summer. Oh my goodness, look at this, guys. We have another ripe tomato. Look at that. I told you that these were from Moonglow Farms. She sells such cool varieties of tomatoes. So this is a dwarf one. Earliest to produce fruit for me this year. I'll save these ones for Dan because I got the first one. There's another one. Look at those. Just beautiful. I've just been pulling the lettuces out of here because they did not do well in here, but that makes sense because this is in the high tunnel and it's pretty hot. Oh, this one's not looking too bad. I can harvest that one for lunch today. But everything else is just absolutely loving the growing conditions of this green stalk. These beautiful little tomatoes. The color of that is so beautiful. So one thing I will say, if I didn't mention this last time, is these do require fertilization. So really good quality potting soil, even some added compost is probably what I'll do next year. And then regular fertilizing in order to keep them robust. I'm not really a container gardener at all. I usually have a few potted flowers and a few hanging planters around my house, but this is the first time that I've gotten a little bit more kind of serious about container gardening, and I just love them so much. But the need to fertilize them is something that's kind of new to me. My hanging baskets always look pretty sad, usually halfway through, because I never remember to fertilize them. Look at these pepper plants. Oh, there is a little baby one here. This one's a California Wonder. Cutie. Look at these ones. Look at this, guys. Look at that pepper. Oh my goodness, makes me happy. These are volunteer sunflowers here. I always let a few go in my high tunnel. You can see a few here. But one thing that I have been doing, is because these are growing up with my pepper plants, is I am keeping the leaves pruned off. Actually, I can pop that one off too. Just so that these don't get shaded out too badly in underneath. But the plants that are underneath them seem to be doing just fine. Last year, the ones that came up in here were like a teddy bear head. They had been a hybrid between a tall variety like this and my teddy bear sunflowers that I had up in my garden. So they were these big tall ones like this with the teddy bear head on the top. So it'll be interesting to see what these ones do. Oh, that one's getting close. So nice and cool in here compared to outside. And then of course, I always need to show these beautiful northern melons that are just going absolutely crazy. I just keep peeking in here to see if I see any melons that are actually starting to grow. There's one, little tiny one. But I hope they have enough time to produce, because they could potentially be very prolific. So I just threw a bunch of different things in here. The salvia, this was some just extra ones that I had, so I put them in there. And some lavender I stuck in between, and then my daughter bought me this really pretty geranium. I had never seen a geranium like this before, and I really think that it turned out quite nice. These are sure looking healthy. So I've just been fertilizing these with my Gaia Green fertilizer here, and they're pretty happy. I'm so curious to see if this artichoke is actually going to bloom for me. I started this way late. Next year I'll start them way earlier, but it looks really happy. I just love how Nala just hangs out in my high tunnel. I hate to leave the high tunnel because I just love it in here so much, but I have other things to show you. I cannot recommend Nina and Winston from BCB Supply enough. So if you're looking to either buy nukes here in BC, or you're looking to buy bee paraphernalia, I will put a link to their shop down in the show notes for you. I need to show you these because we have been waiting for these to start blooming since I started them back in February. I just love them. Aren't they just beautiful? So this is going to look just gorgeous in about a week, but it's already looking really pretty. So I've talked about growing borage for the bumblebees. So similarly to the comfrey, the bumblebees absolutely love the borage. Interestingly enough, the honeybees, not so much, but the bumblebees love it. This little patch here is usually just covered with them, and they're so pretty. Look at how brown the grass is getting already. We do try to keep it watered here up and close to the house just for fire prevention, but it is getting brown everywhere else that is not being watered right now. So this here is our main potato patch here, and it's just looking absolutely fantastic this year. I'm hoping that this may be potentially our best potato year ever, but only time will tell. So as far as potatoes go and when to harvest them, they start producing their tubers when they start flowering like this. And once the leaves die back, that's when the tubers are fully mature and ready to harvest. But you can harvest new potatoes. So those are those yummy small potatoes once the plants are done flowering, usually within about 2 weeks or so after that. And so we will be able to start getting some young, tender potatoes here in the next few weeks, but they are definitely looking pretty good this year. I hope you enjoyed wandering around the garden with me today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye guys.